This is Jeremy Jorgensen, host of the Why at a Five podcast, proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Each show on the network is independently owned, and the views expressed may not represent those of other podcasts. For the best education podcasts, visit edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Matthew Goldberg. That's right, he's back on the show, and he's an incredible author who writes thrillers, dramas, YA, and adult. Our focus today is his YA mystery called Miles in Time, Book 1, Solve the Mystery, Save the Future. Great read. Awesome story. Cool characters. You're going to love this conversation. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you took a minute to help out the podcast. How could you do that, you ask? I'm glad you asked that question. Here are 3 ways. 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, click on the link on my website homepage to buy me a coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That'd be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Matthew Goldberg is the Anthony, Lefty, and Prix du Polar nominated author of 15 novels, including The Ancestor and the Mentor and The Great Gimmelmans, along with his 5-book Desire Card series and the Runaway Train trilogy. Miles in Time came out May 2025, just a little bit ago. After graduating with an MFA from the New School, he's been published in multiple languages, and his writing has also appeared as a contributor in CrimeReads, Pipeline Artists, LitHub, Chicago Quarterly Review, Electric Literature, the Los Angeles Review of Books, the Jewish Book Council, the Millions, Volume 1 Brooklyn, LitReactor, Mystery Tribune, the Nerd Daily, Monkeybicycle, Fiction Writers Review, Cagibi, Necessary Fiction, the anthology Dirty Boulevard, the Montreal Review, the Adirondack Review, the New Plains Review, Maudlin House, and others. His pilots and screenplays have been finalists in Script Pipeline, Book Pipeline, Stage 32, We Screenplay, the New York Screenplay, Screencraft, and the Hollywood Screenplay Contest. He is the publisher of Fringe Press, the co-curator of the Guerrilla Lit Reading Series, and lives in New York City. Our focus today is Lee's latest book, Miles in Time, Book 1, Solve the Mystery, Save the Future. Lee, thanks so much for joining me again. This is an awesome book, and say hi to everyone.
Thanks so much for having me again, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be on.
Well, it's great to have you back, and you are an amazing author from thrillers, mysteries, dramas, adult, and YA. This is so cool. How do you develop an idea that you have? I mean, what steps do you take from idea to book?
So usually an idea sits for sometimes even like a year in the back of my head. I'll be working on a book while another one is kind of in the wings. And then it's always just kind of worked out for me. As I finish one, it's time for the other one to push to the front of my head, and then I start writing about it. So like now I just started a new book. I'm about 30 pages in. It's an adult thriller, but it's been cooking for about a year or so. And then kind of the characters just tell me like, it's time, let's go. And that's usually when it happens.
Nice. Love it. It's you have a really good way of creating characters that just that resonate with you. And I mean, I've read some of your characters who you're wondering whether they're real or not.
Yeah. I mean, they are, maybe not in this world, but in, some other alternate world they exist. And then I just pluck them and put them in my books, basically.
Yeah, so cool. It's so cool. So, in Miles in Time, Book 1, so tell me, who is Miles? Tell everyone.
Yeah, so Miles is a 14-year-old kid in kind of middle America, Iowa, and he has an older brother, Simon. His brother, Simon, is a genius inventor, and there's like whispers that maybe he's working on a time machine, and but the brothers never really got along too well. They're very different in terms of who they are, and he opens up the door one day and finds Simon dead, and just doesn't believe that something like that could happen. And through kind of a coded message, figures out that Simon has created a time machine, and Simon wants him to go back in time to figure out who potentially killed him, because Miles' other side to him is that he's an amateur detective, and he's a lover of Sherlock Holmes. So who better than Miles to figure out the murder of his brother?
That's awesome. I love the description, and I love all this stuff. It's tragic about him finding his brother dead. I mean, that's like, whoa, hey.
But it starts the story,
Yes.
like Simon is alive for the book, basically, because they're back in time. And then it's just, they have a window of opportunity to solve it, because if they don't solve it, obviously, before the weekends, his brother will be dead. So it's kind of pedal to the metal for them.
It's so powerful. It's a cool aspect to this, really cool aspect to the story. And early in Miles in time, you're describing Miles' mom and dad, and mom has she takes a series of pills, and then you get into this description. So I'm going to read from your book for a second. While mom's state made it tough for us to have a real relationship, things were even worse with dad. He was beyond moody and spent most of his time in the basement working on his inventions. So talk about his parents and this impact.
Sure. Yeah. So, he comes from a home where there's, a lot of stuff going on. The mother is kind of checked out. We don't really know why. That's kind of something that happens as the book progresses. And it's definitely the focus of the second book, where he and his brother go back to save the mom in terms of what led her to this state in 1999. So that one just came out, Time Fixers. But her state has really kind of erupted the family. So the dad is such a caretaker. His whole life is really, entrenched in taking care of the mom. It's not allowed him to live his full potential. He wants to be a genius inventor as well. So there's a lot of fractures in the family when we meet Miles. And I think that has a lot to do with sort of the state that he's in. He's a good kid. He's really kind of sweet. He, as characters go in my books, he's as nice as this is gonna get, basically. But you meet him kind of a little bit broken, and he has to kind of work to put the pieces back together of his family.
It's so awesome, and I think it just it's just an aspect to that just resonates with the readers. It's especially like one of the things you get into is describing, this function that's between his parents that has all kinds of things going on, and that whole thing about the inventions. Except there's tragedy. It's tragic at the same time. It made me chuckle as you're describing this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the book is a lot of emotions. There's definitely tragedy, but it's sweet. It's comical. I think the characters are really endearing. You really for all ages. I think, kids who read it can identify with a lot of the characters. Parents who read it could identify in terms of their own kids. And the main thing that I needed to do is that every character basically is a suspect. So they all have kind of a side to them. Okay, maybe they were the one who did it. So the father has a moody side. Is he somebody who's involved in the brother's invention and wanted it for some reason? So it was the first mystery I really ever wrote, and the big importance was that you really could guess that anybody might be the killer ultimately.
And it's awesome that way. I love it. So I got to say this one of the things. Now, once again, I have to explain myself that yes, it's tragic because he finds his brother dead.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah.
And Miles believes that his brother was murdered, not just not that he took his own life or something like that.
Right. Yes. The way it's kind of set up is that the brother killed himself, but Miles is like, nah, he would never do that. His passion is his time machine. He'll live until he figures that out. There's no way. So that's the first instance that okay, something fishy is going on here. And again, he's an amateur detective. He runs his own little cute detective agency where they're usually paid in pies to find missing cats. So he's been waiting for this big case to finally happen. I don't think he realizes the extent of the big case and that it would involve his family and such, big things like murder and potential suicide and etc. But he's also amped to actually be able to showcase his talents as well.
And it's so awesome, unique, powerful part of the story because it's and especially here's one of one of my favorite discussions or comments that's made here is the dad saying, and it's basically commenting that he's wasting his time with the detective stuff. Don't get lost in this. You got C's last time and in this course and stuff like this, and you need to stop wasting your time on that. And that's what's actually going to kind of bring the save the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think also I got good grades in school, but if I wasn't interested, I was not interested. So I was writing my own little books during science, during math. I really checked out in subjects that I just had no interest in. So when I was creating Miles, I think when you're creating a young character, which is, 30 years from when I was that age, you have to find certain commonalities to kind of touch on. So Miles is very different. I mean, he's a lot more introverted and a little quieter and nerdier than I was when I was a kid. But he had a passion, and his passion is being a detective. And my passion at that age was being a writer. So nice. I really kind of connected him to that. And some of his humor, I think, is a little similar to what I was. I was a lot more outgoing and et cetera when I was that age. But there was enough of me that kind of, existed in Miles. And I also really wanted to, I write really dark criminal thrillers for the most part. I really just wanted a break from that. And I wanted to write kind of a sweet story, even though there's murder and stuff happening. This is a story that an 11-year-old could read and would really be fine with. The intimacy between him and his little girlfriend is as PG as it gets, so I really wanted something that could be for all ages, really.
Oh, I think you achieved that, because it's
Thank you.
And it's really cool because it's you see the thought process is happening here as soon as, I mean, there's, even though the evidence is kind of showing that Simon took his life, he's like, no. No.
Yeah, no. Miles is his brother is a genius, but Miles is a pretty smart guy too. He's probably even more street smart than Simon is for the most part. Yeah.
Gotcha. One of the things that happens as he's looking into his brother's death and being that detective, and he starts uncovering some clues that take him down a certain route and certain path. And what happens here is he uncovers his brother's book that appears to be left on purpose for him to discover, and which is really cool. And it's called The Do's and Don'ts of Time Travel. And it's right here I was imagining now we have some music dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I kind of got, a lot of this book, little pieces from, other things. So I think that came from Beetlejuice, where they go into the afterlife and they find the book, I forget the title, but how to, live in the undead or whatever it's called, of. So I think that sparked the idea for, and time travel is hard. It's been done a lot. So there's a lot of rules already out there. So I wanted to kind of take a few of those and then make some of my own up and then break those rules as well. A big part of the book is, him meeting his past self, which usually is a no-no in time travel books. And I'm no, his past self could help him out to solve the crime. That's so much more interesting. So, because it's not real, there's a lot you could play with. But I also did a lot of research and scientific aspects to make it kind of as real as it was. And then the glove I loved when I was a kid, the Nintendo Power Glove. I remember having that when I was a kid. So that was a nod to, my 80s childhood. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool to know that. I remember the Power Glove.
The Power. I was thinking of okay, what would be a time travel device that I haven't seen, but also is very transportable, easy, to kind of slip on and off. And I don't know, it just kind of was okay, yeah, the Nintendo glove. And I remember having that and being really into it when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a neat nod right there. Right? And especially because you could, someone who's brilliant like Simon making something that would be so easily carried, as opposed to some giant machine that you can only ride.
Also, in thinking of, just as I was like thinking, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be a series. I wasn't sure. I think when I started out, this book was also written a long time ago. It took a long time to get to publication. So the first draft is like 10 years ago. We're talking about, maybe even more. I want to even maybe say 15. Like,
Wow.
one of those books that I would put down and pick up and put down and pick up again and again and again. And a lot of the really difficulty was, it was hard. I feel like it was submitted to a couple of editors years ago, and they couldn't figure out if it was young adult or middle grade. So like that was a big conversation, which to me was like such a dumb conversation. Like, just who cares? Like, promote a book and people will find it. So it was just finding a publisher that, like, honestly, really, I'm gonna say shit, but like didn't give a shit.
Right.
And yeah, that was really the hardest thing about these books. And originally it was going to be a trilogy, and as I was writing the second one, I don't know, it just felt natural in terms of wrapping everything up, and I didn't want to like extend it. I mean, if the books take off on such another level, sure, I could figure out a third book, but I think these characters are good. Like, I think the second book really wraps up everything with the family and takes things to where they organically need to go.
That's cool. And I got to tell you right now, boy, talk about giving a boost to people who've had this idea and they've been working on it for a while, and you made your idea happen. I mean, even with the walls.
I mean, I'm very prolific, so like I have a few books in the wings that are kind of just like waiting. I have these books about a cult that I've been working on for even longer. I mean, like 15x years, and they're like 600 pages. So sometimes it's like I always kind of say a book goes on the journey the book is meant to go on, and sometimes it's not at the moment, and you have to kind of just wait for the right time. And I guess this was the right time for these two. Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, it works and it's awesome, and I hate that it took you so long, but at the same time,
it's okay. Like I said, like it wasn't like, look, I wasn't only working on these books for 10, like you've seen, I've written a lot. So it's like, sometimes it's just like, it needs to wait to be edited almost. So like the version of 10 years ago versus now, there was a lot of change. The character wasn't bi at that time. I thought that was like a good extra thing to kind of, that he was just wrestling with this extra thing outside of it. So there's been changes that happen, throughout the course of the edits.
It like I said, you talk about giving hope to people who are working on ideas, because you definitely were writing
on it. You never know.
Yeah, because you definitely were writing other stuff at the time, because you.
And I think that's really good advice too. Like, sometimes a book just isn't working at the moment. Like, you putting it down doesn't erase that book. You could start something new and then go back to it. I do that a lot, honestly. Like, I pick at books sometimes. Sometimes they just come out and they're done, and that's great, and like that's fantastic. And then other ones take a lot longer, like to prune, I guess.
Yeah, that's cool. And before we leave this, I got to come back. I got to go back to when you're talking about the do's and don'ts of time travel, because one of the things that is so cool is that you create these rules. Some of them sound very similar. I'm a fan of sci-fi, and I like the idea of trying to figure out time travel or how it might work or not work. And there's always something about, you don't want to meet yourself because that might cause catastrophe. And it's cool to see authors break those rules. Create the rule and then break the rule. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'm all about stories. So what was the most interesting for the plot and the story? There's some really nice moments where he meets, there's some comedy too when he meets his past self. But it's also interesting to see how like he's already grown so far past him in that week. I mean, he's somebody who's experienced major tragedy. Right. Where the past self hasn't yet. So they're the same, but they're very, very different in terms of their experiences. So that was a cool thing to kind of write about as well. And his past self is a big part of him solving, I mean, it's not a spoiler. Of course, he's going to solve the crime. It's a young adult book,
Right.
But like, the past self was a big part of it. And I haven't had anybody guess who the killer was. So that's been a cool thing. I haven't had anybody who's been like, I saw it right away. There were people who were like, I had it was one of the options, but like nobody clearly was like, this is who it is. So to me, that was the biggest compliment because mysteries are really, really tough to write. And this was my first stab at one.
Well, that's cool. That's 'cause I'm someone who doesn't try to figure it out. Like
Oh, nice,
I just sort of go
nice.
down the path and see where you take me. So
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
I don't want to go. Oh, I ruined it
Right.
for myself.
I'm the opposite. If I'm reading a mystery, I mean, I'm such a judgmental reader anyway that I'm always like trying to figure out everything. But yeah, it's hard for me in a mystery not to try to figure out who did it. Yeah.
Gotcha. One of the things I got to make sure I mention here is that your imagery is really cool because you use words to paint pictures and that's, I almost started to talk about this before when I was talking about Dad complaining about Miles's detective agency, because there's just a couple conversations in there that it's like, I think I've heard this. I may not have been a detective, but I'm pretty sure I got talked about, your whatever. In my case, it was comic books. All right. But it's just cool because it makes you think about relationships and interactions with people and so forth. You help the reader picture what you're describing. And here's an example from your book. If someone looked up the word uncool in the dictionary, Ellery's face would likely be there. He was riddled with acne scars and had a long, thin neck with an Adam's apple the size of a golf ball. He wore T-shirts with various science puns that no one else would get. His hair looked like his mom had combed it for a school picture, and he always had a cowlick sticking up as well. I'm pretty sure I met Ellery, all right?
Yeah, that's a brutal description though, now hearing it. Poor Ellery. I mean, he's such a minor character too, but like I think that the main point is like even when you have these sort of like throwaway characters, you really have to make them as real as possible too. So a lot of times, even if a character is only in it for a scene, like that character, you want them to pop as well and to be as realized and for somebody to be like, yes, I've seen that kid. And Ellery, I feel like is a little bit of a kind of an asshole too. So like maybe he deserves that description. Yeah.
Yes, it does fit well. Yeah.
Yeah, now I remember who. Yeah. He's kind of nasty to Miles and Simon, so he deserves it.
He deserves it, yes. But it was just like, oh my gosh, though. I think I've really met this person, and it just. But and my point, like you said, is you do this with characters and scenes and things where it's neat because you're able to take your imagination and kind of fly with the descriptions you've given, and I love that.
Yeah, I always like to say I like to do all the work for the reader. So like I want it to be as visual as possible where you just kind of sit back and fall into the story. And not all writers are like that. Sometimes the reader has to do like that extra work to really like imagine it. But I come from such like a film background and a love of film that like my writing is very filmic and it kind of just unspools that way. So yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like that's what I'm always aiming for, that, you read my book like you're watching a movie.
Yeah, it's really there. I love it. This is, one of the things now, you've already talked about this. I got to say this because you started going into the editing because of how long your book took. And, one of the things that I think's cool though is, as you were talking about that, I mean, because as I'm reading this, I mean, there's not problems with words or a misspelling or something like this. And there's, everything just flows and it's working and it's so readable. And I was just wondering, did you use multiple types of editors as you were making this happen, especially in the more recent to make it?
Yeah, I mean, I usually do. I don't think I did for this one. I mean, again, also I was working on it for so long that like there couldn't have been a mistake at this point, and obviously like my editor for the books at Wolfpack Publishing, Rachel DeGrasse, she did a great job. There was a copy editor on it. But I don't think I used, again, also because the editor that I used before I even give my book to my agent is like for my adult crime stuff. So I don't even know if he would be the right person for a young adult book. It's just not the world that I know as much. So I think I just like did it kind of on my own. And especially the second book, which was like written in like a month and then just put out. Like, I mean, that one was the fastest process I've ever had with a book before. Like, I was on a deadline, it was due, I was putting it off because I was working on an adult novel. we were hitting towards the end of the year. The book was due in like 4 weeks, and I just wrote it. So I'm actually pretty proud of that one because I think it's really good for like
That's
a
cool.
month work. Yeah. And especially because like Miles in Time took like a decade, and then the sequel took like a month, you know,
Nice.
so the weirdness of that, and that both are really good books. I mean, Miles in Time, you know, has a little bit more of a special place in my heart, obviously, because of that. But Time Fiction is really cool. It's set in 1999, and it's a lot more about the family, and it was fun to go back in that era for like a month. Yeah.
That's cool. And that what a neat just juxtaposition between the two. I mean, it's
Right,
yeah,
right. Yeah, it was a little like uncanny to think about just because one took just so long.
right.
But it's the business too. It's like you kind of never know when you're writing it how long it's going to take. Even sometimes you get a deal, it's 2 years after the deal the book comes out. So like it's a glacial business at times.
Gotcha, gotcha. So one of the things I got to say here is that, and you're talking about this at Miles being your first real
Mhm.
mystery. One of the things that I've always heard mystery writers talk about is not writing themselves into a corner. And
Yeah.
and I was wondering if you kind of experienced any of that, especially as you were moving over time, or if that's something that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in thinking about it, actually it's really not I mean, my book Stalker Stalked was really a mystery. You didn't know who the stalker was, so like I had to deal with that. Even the Ancestor has a lot of mystery elements. I mean, mystery was like a part of my other books. This one was just like solve the mystery kind of. And in terms of writing this, I mean, I outline a lot, so like the whole book, you know, and again, I'm trying to remember because it was 10 years ago, but like a good amount was outlined. I knew who the killer was pretty much from jump in terms of the book. I've heard other mystery writers, like I've just been to like a lot of conferences this year. And I was just at one where a lot of the mystery authors really are pantsers, and they have no idea each day what they're going to write, nor who the killer is. So they never write themselves into a corner really because they always have an out. And I'm curious to try that sometime, only with a mystery maybe. But I'm so used to outlining and figuring everything out. Like it would give me like agita if I didn't know where something was going. So I never really had an issue with this one. The biggest hurdle was figuring out all of the red herrings throughout. So I wanted enough of those where you're like, okay, I think it's this person. So that I think was the biggest challenge, was like peppering those red herrings. So you really think that everybody's, you know, like even somebody who you would never think potentially could be the villain.
Well, it works so well, and it's awesome,
Thank you.
and it's cool,
Thank
and
you.
it's. I've heard authors talk about things like they suddenly realize that they changed the way the character speaks, or they changed, or they just did something that couldn't happen unless they figure out,
Yeah.
okay, how can I put them in a room that does have a door or something, and
Right, right, right. I mean, I'm sure there was like a scene challenge here and there with this. But also like trapping myself. The biggest trap was like keeping it as young adult as possible because there's just certain things you can't do respectively, to make it like I always wanted this to be like 12 and up could read it. So that was a challenge too, because if you read some of my other stuff, like in The Mentor, there was like cannibalism and murder and like all of this stuff. Like, no, a 12-year-old should not be reading that. So in
right.
keeping it as like PG 13 as possible, that was my biggest challenge, honestly.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. It's easy to fall back into that adult
Yeah,
things.
I mean the other stuff is easy for me. Like it's easy for me to go like really dark. Like even the one I'm working on now is like veering in that territory more than I intended. But being sweet is harder for me, I guess.
Nice, nice. Well, you created an awesome story here. I love it. Miles in Time is a neat. It's really good story. It moves. You connect with the characters, and you want to find out what happens. And I
Mhm.
love it. And it's cool. I've got to read the second one because I love
Yeah, yeah, go for it. The second one is a lot of fun as well. And again, I think wraps up everything with the characters really nicely.
Awesome. So I just want to remind everybody that, the title of the book is Miles in Time, which is book 1. And then the second one is Time Fixers. Fix the past, save your bomb, and don't fall for the enemy, which I love that.
Don't fall for it.
Love it. So Lee, just where do you want our listeners to find more information about you and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm any social media, Lee Matthew Goldberg on most things. I think except for X, but like don't even bother with that one anymore. And my website, LeeMatthewGoldberg.com, is a portal to everything Lee Matthew Goldberg.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that's in the show notes so they go find you there and look at all the other stuff that you've been working on over time.
Yes.
that's out there. It's so cool. I got one last question for you before we call it quits today, and it goes like this: if you were the closing keynote for a summer conference of brand new writers, what is something that you would tell them about writing that you would want them to leave the conference talking about?
Oh, interesting. I think if this is going to be your career, to like really go full throttle as much as possible with it. I think once I got very serious about that this was what I wanted to do with my life, that was when opportunities started opening up. So like if you're really serious, just go for it. You have an idea for a book, write it. Find a community who could give you notes on it and things like that. I think that's really important. Read everything, consume everything in terms of inspiration, and just don't second guess yourself.
Love it. That's awesome advice. Lee, it's been awesome catching up with you. Miles in Time is incredible. I love it. And we got to make sure that listeners, you got to make sure that you also keep an eye out for that second book, Time Fixers. So good stuff. I wish you the best in all you do.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks again for having me.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.